Yes, lads, welcome back to the channel. Today, we've got a transfer window roundup. I'm going to be ranking all Premier League clubs. I'm going to be doing sort of the old school conventional way. So, for example, A plus is the highest mark you can get, and an F is the lowest mark you can get. And I'm going to be looking at the transfer fee itself. How much value for money do I think that is? Have they overpaid? Manchester United, and I'll also be looking at a few other things as well, mainly in terms of problem positions from last season. Have they filled those gaps, and is the team a better team for having the players that they have in? So, without further ado, let's get into this. We're starting with Arsenal. So, Arsenal then, I'm going to give them an A, and I think the main reason for that is, first of all, Victor Gyökeres. Great signing for them. He is a striker that they needed very badly, and he's going to play a lot of minutes this season. You can already tell from the way that Arteta's setting the team up. But I also think getting in Eze is a huge signing as well. And I'll also mention Madueke there too. When I first saw Madueke had joined, I was questioning really why with Nweni, and also the fact they've got Max Dowman coming through, although I do think he shouldn't be playing too many games. And of course, Bukayo Saka. But Madueke is showing that he's got a bit of versatility to go to the left or the right, and now Saka's got injured. So that's a very solid signing. As for Eze on the left-hand side, I just think this is probably the best signing they've actually made. He's the most expensive, that's why I've put him where he is. But I also think him, alongside with Victor Gyökeres and Zumabedi, just three great signings for Arsenal. Eze, so good off that left-hand side, cutting in. He will cause defences nightmares. And I think him, Odegaard and Madueke as a three, or if it's Saka that does play, they can really break teams down that do sit in that low block and frustrate Arsenal a little bit. We spoke on Zumabedi a little bit, and he has brought a lot of solidity to that midfield. Him and Rice as a pairing look very good. Great signing overall. We knew that he was a good player. He's come in and proven exactly why they signed him, for the big money as well. So yeah, Arsenal, decent window. Mosquera, Hincapié also coming in. Great defensive cover. I just think overall, as a side, they're very close to being title ready. I just think that their tactics and mentality might be what lets them down. But off the pitch, great signings. And a good start to the season for them as well. The loss to Liverpool, yeah, Arteta's got to go for it a bit more. He now has the players to do so. Up next, we've got Aston Villa, and I'm going to give them a C-. Now, this was lower before deadline day. Of course, Harvey Elliott and Jadon Sancho both arriving at Villa on loan, with options to buy, obligation for Harvey Elliott, I believe. So, good signings there, but overall, it's been a bit of a dismal summer for Aston Villa. Strucken by PSR, SER, all the problems there. I just think that we've been very limited. I am a Villa fan, of course, but I think we've been very limited in terms of what we can do. Take Jack Grealish as a prime example. We would have gone in for him, I think, if we could afford the wages. It's a really complicated one. It seems as though Villa have money to spend, but just not on wages to comply with UEFA. That causes a lot of issues. But in terms of who has come in, Gassond coming in from Nice, good signing that is. He looks to be a live wire, a very Leon Bailey-esque kind of player. As of course is Jadon Sancho, and then you've got your more sort of intricate creativity in Harvey Elliott, who does have a buyback clause in the deal for Liverpool, which I think if he does well, they will exercise when Salah leaves. But overall, a decent addition to the front line. No striker has come in to be the backup to Ollie Watkins, so they're going to be relying on Marlon and other players like that that can fill the position. But yeah, just an all-right window in terms of incomings. Lindelof on a free was a decent deal as well. It's the outgoings that are a bit of an issue. So Jacob Ramsey, a homegrown, one of our own player, off to Newcastle, £40 million plus. It's a good deal on paper, but realistically, I think in terms of the dressing room and everything else that goes with it, it's a deal that Villa just shouldn't have to make, but felt the need to do so. So a disappointing one there. Jacob Ramsey going to be a big loss for Villa. A good game for Newcastle too. But yeah, overall, Villa saved themselves on deadline day. A C-, I think, is a fair reflection. As for Bournemouth, I'm going to give them a B. And I think the reason they get a B for me is because they did so well to recover from the losses that they took. So we'll start with who they lost. Hodgson to Real Madrid, Milos Kerkez to Liverpool, Kepa to Arsenal. I know he wasn't their player, but he was still their number one last season. And of course, Ilya Zabani to PSG as well. Some huge transfer fees involved for those players, but that's 4 of your 5 if you count the goalkeepers a back 5. That's 4 out of 5 that have gone. Massive, massive positions to fill. And I seem to think they have actually done it. They started the season off the 4-2 loss to Liverpool. Liverpool did look very good, but Bournemouth showed a lot of grit and resilience. And I genuinely think that this defence they've rebuilt, I guess, looks very solid. In particular, I will say Petrovic, I think this is such a good signing. I think he did very well for Chelsea. He was unlucky to not keep that starting number one position, especially when Robert Sanchez is the number one. If they would have got someone else in, I would understand. I thought Petrovic was a good keeper for Chelsea. He's going to prove it for Bournemouth. I also like Trifei. He's come in and done some good things. So overall, that Bournemouth defence is very good. In terms of who's coming in the attack, of course, Ben Doak has signed from Liverpool. Unsure on the fee on this one, £25 million, but I'm sure he'll go on to prove that he's worth it. Very young, a lot of potential. Adley from Leverkusen also coming in. A very interesting style of play match in terms of Bournemouth. I think he'll fit in so well with Kluivert, Semenyo and all the rest. So yeah, good signings from Bournemouth, and I'm going to give them a B, even though the signings are maybe a C level, just in terms of who they lost and how they managed to replace them. So a good window for Bournemouth. The most important thing, though, is that they kept Iriola. What a manager he is. Brentford, similar to Bournemouth, will start with who they lost. Now, overall for Brentford, I'm going to give them a D. They lost Mbuemo, they lost Wissa, and of course, they lost Thomas Frank as well. So they had such a huge amount of change go on within the club. In terms of who they've brought in, if we actually use the manager, Keith Andrews, I'm not sure that's the right appointment. But then to replace Mbuemo, Otara, he started very well. That looks to be a good signing. £42 million, though, very expensive for the experience he had at the time, I guess. Will it prove to pay off? Maybe it will, but in terms of a fee, it's very expensive. And as for Wissa, there's no real replacement. It's Thiago that was signed last season, so technically it is almost like a new signing, but it's just not, though. And that's where I think they could have gone in and got someone else. I know Wissa went on deadline day, but it was very obvious to all of us that he was going. Jordan Henderson on a free, maybe a clever signing, a good bit of business, age, experience, etc. And Kelleher, that's also a very good signing for me. In goal, a bit of stability. They're going to be in a relegation scrap to some extent this season, and that's the kind of goalkeeper that sort of gets you out of trouble. And looks after you. So Kelleher, to me, is a very good signing. And Brentford, it's just a bit lackluster, is what I'd say. So yeah, I'm going to give them a D. I don't think they strengthened enough. Up next, we've got Brighton. And Brighton, to me, a bit of an interesting one. I've given them a C overall. And I just think it's because whoever's gone out, they've sort of replaced, and you just never know with Brighton. So the big notable departure, of course, João Pedro, leaving to Chelsea, a big hole for them to fill. And of course, they do have Danny Welbeck still, but Kostoulas is the name that has come in, and for a big fee as well. Another one, Estupinian has left. In comes De Kuyper at left back, which I think is a very good signing. He looks to be very good. Bruges had a bit of a golden generation, if I'm going to be honest, in terms of who's been at the club in the last couple of years. He is one of them. A very good signing, a very Brighton signing to make. They've also went and got Bascagli on a free transfer as well. A very good bit of business, a nice bit of experience. And you look at the leaders of that team. You've got Bascagli, you've got Milner, Welbeck. A very good spine of experience that the other players will just sort of fit around. So yeah, overall, I think a C is very fair. They've sort of lost a few good players, brought a few good players in. They haven't really improved, but they certainly haven't got worse, in my opinion. Up next, we've got Burnley, the first of the newly promoted sides, and I'm going to give them an E. I like some of the moves they've made. I think Hartman, for example, is a good signing and a great left back for them. I'm not now too keen on some of the other signings. I think Leslie Ugachukwu in CDM, a big price tag for the sort of player that he is, not sure. And Brozier to me is not the signing that you make to stay in this league. And for £20 million, I believe it was, that is just not a good deal in my eyes. Kyle Walker, a great bit of experience, £5 million though. I thought it was a free transfer at first, but it was actually, £5 million. I'm not sure on that, if I'm going to be honest. At first, I really liked it. Now I'm sort of seeing it transpire. Is Kyle Walker a little bit too past it? Should he have gone to the Serie A? Maybe he should have. So yeah, not 100% sure on the Kyle Walker transfer. And just overall, the names aren't quite good enough. Of course, they've also got Florentino as well. Heard good things about this lad. Not sure in terms of his physicality and pace, if he's going to be good enough for the Premier League. I think at best for Burnley, if they can get things going, they might manage to finish in the relegation zone still, but just not rock bottom. Unfortunately, the window, underwhelming in my eyes. They lost Trafford, they lost Egan Riley as well. Two huge parts of that defence last season that was so good. I'm unsure for Burnley's safety in this Premier League this year. I think it's an average window, E at best. Up next, we've got Chelsea, and I'm going to give Chelsea a B+. very close to an A, a very good window for them. And in particular, as mentioned previously, João Pedro and Estevao. Two very exciting players, not even to mention Jamie Gittins, who also is a very exciting player. But it's those two in particular that I'm most impressed with. Two players that have come into the system, it really works for them. Estevao, for the age that he is and the confidence that he has got such a big ceiling and he's committed to Chelsea. So Chelsea fans, let me know, do you think Estevao has the potential to go on to be not only the best player in the Premier League, but in the world? Because he's certainly starting like that in European football. No time to acclimatise, he's gone straight in. After saying those three names, two of which wingers, you would not think that Garnacho also joins Chelsea. £40 million for Garnacho. I do think that's not a bad deal. I rate Garnacho, but attitude-wise, I've got to question it. How well is he going to do at Chelsea? Is he going to get, his head down, really knuckle down now, forget about Instagram and start focusing on the football? I hope he does, because there's a seriously good player in there. For me personally, I'm surprised he forced his way out of Manchester United as much as he did from when Amorim came in. Of course, Liam Delap came in as well, a good signing there for Chelsea. £30 million, about fair. I thought Delap maybe should have gone to Everton, got a bit more first-team football, could have potentially even forced himself into the England squad. He's injured now anyway, but he'll come back. And lastly, I just wanted to touch on Hato. Hato seems to me to be a great signing. Young centre-back, slots in on that left-hand side, a clear Levi Colwill replacement due to his injury. Good signing all round. Again, another player with a lot of hype. If he can live up to that, Chelsea have got themselves a very solid centre-back. I'll also just touch on Chelsea's clear out as well. They've accumulated the most transfer funds in the Premier League. And I mean, what do you even say with Chelsea in terms of how they operate? But I mean, it clearly works to an extent. Vega, high price. Petrovic, high price. Madueke, £52 million. That is insane to me. João Felix, £43 million. All of these signings that they brought in not even that long ago, now shipped out for maybe profit. I'm not sure how it is that they structure the fees. So yeah, whatever's going on behind Chelsea's doors, it's something crafty, some good, getting rid of Deadwood there, I guess, and they have brought in quality. So yeah, a B+ overall for Chelsea. As for Crystal Palace then, I'm going to give them a C. Similar to Brighton, have they got worse? Maybe just slightly, in all fairness to Crystal Palace. But have they got drastically worse? No. Of course, Eze leaving to Arsenal, a big loss for them. If Gahey would have gone to Liverpool on the final day of deadline day, I would say that this is maybe an E. It's not an F, but an E or a D at best. Fortunately, Gahey stays. Igor went to West Ham, pulled out of that move to Crystal Palace on the final hour of deadline day. So Mark Gahey stays at Crystal Palace, and a lot of people have mentioned it, Wissa, Isak. They don't show the club any respect. They ask to move. They don't want to play. Mark Gahey does the complete professional thing to do, captains his side week in, week out, and he doesn't get his move, but they do. And I think a lot of people have said it, as I say, it sets a very, very bad precedent for transfers in the future. But in terms of Palace incomings, I wanted to look at two. The first is Jeremy Pino. What a live wire this guy looks. A really solid signing. Will go onto that left-hand side, replace Eze directly. And I think he has a different game to Eze, but a great signing overall. And a very good fee as well. There was talk back in the day of him going for 60+ million. So a very good fee. And also, Canvot, the centre-half, linked with Aston Villa very heavily in the window. A bid was apparently placed, but he'll slot in right back and centre-half. Very good addition for them there. So I think Crystal Palace, as I say, they may have got slightly worse. Keeping Gahey is a fantastic, signing for them, I guess, because he literally had the goodbye video ready to go. C overall, nothing too special. Decent enough. Up next, then, we've got Everton, and this was very close to being an A. But I just still feel as though there's a few positions on the pitch for Everton that they haven't quite covered, but they have made some great signings. So we'll start with Jack Grealish. What a signing this looks to be. On loan from Manchester City, and he just looks like a new man, revolutionised in this David Moyes team. I knew wherever we went, he was going to pick up that form. What he had at Aston Villa was he had that sort of raw creativity. I'm going to do things that no one expects. I'm going to pull players out, draw them in. All of the things that we found to love about Jack Grealish, whether you watched him for a Villa shirt or an England shirt. Now at Everton, after having years with Pep Guardiola, he is now a different kind of player. He has that raw creativity still, but knows exactly how much to use of it before making that killer incisive pass. Everton have got themselves one of the best players in the Premier League so far this season. I think that form's going to carry on. A great signing overall. They also signed Tyler Dibbling for a huge fee. A great signing for them. Very young as well. And who is he going to learn off? He will learn off Jack Grealish. And I think the two of those two together, they can really help this Everton team. I think Dibbling, a big price tag. I don't necessarily think he's worth that much in my opinion. England tax has probably stung him a bit there. But realistically, under David Moyes, he'll have the freedom to, be creative and try and set things up. Learning from Jack Grealish, a very good combination. They'll be trying to feed in Barry up front, signed from Villarreal, a very tall striker, similar build to Beto. David Moyes, he's assembling his tall players, isn't he? We can see it again. They also signed Roll, who is also tall. Again, a bit of maybe a Fellaini type player for David Moyes. But I think overall, a very good window for them. I do think they're a bit light in certain positions. Maybe the fullback positions could have been upgraded a bit better. But yeah, Moyes' Everton, B+ for me. Jack Grealish, the highlight. Of course, sorry, how can I even not mention Dewsbury Hall? Escaped my mind. Another fantastic signing for David Moyes. Him, Grealish, Dibbling, they'll link up really, really well. So yeah, Everton, going to have a good season. They might even be able to push into Europe. This window, B+. Fulham, F. What on earth was this transfer window for Fulham? So in terms of incomings, very, very few. Very, very few. The only notable one was Kevin, a big transfer fee for him. Maybe he can come in, hit the ground running, and just inject this team with some form of quality, because they just didn't bring any in. And they are a good side. I do like Fulham. They've got a good manager as well in Silva. The problem for me here is just they needed to back him, and I know that FFP might have restricted them, but overall, I have to give this window an F. Very disappointing. And I've gone for Kevin twice because I'm just not having a second choice goalkeeper being their best signing. I'm not doing it. So Kevin wins the biggest transfer and also the best signing for this one. But yeah, Fulham, F, poor window. They'll need to do better in January if they can spend. Again, I don't actually know the PSR ins and outs for Fulham. They may be restricted by PSR. If that is the case, they're just another victim of this awful system, if we're going to be honest. Up next, we've got Leeds. Bit of a confusing one, Leeds. They've made some decent signings, but not enough, in my opinion, to keep them in the league. Leeds had everything. They had a very good base squad. They needed to add quality in certain different areas. I don't necessarily think they've done that. Typical Leeds signings, if I'm going to be honest. A D overall. I think Calvert-Lewin actually could have brought that down to an E. I'm not sure why they signed Calvert-Lewin, and I think he's on some half-decent wages as well. The standout signing is Goodmanson for me. He looks to be a very solid left-back. Been very impressed from what I've seen from him, as well as Statch in the middle. So they've made some decent signings, but overall, not really enough, in my opinion, to now keep them in the league. If I could do my season predictions again, I would maybe slip them into the relegation zone. Just not too keen. Of course, they've got Dan James, who everyone keeps telling me that I look like. So maybe Dan James can pull them out the fire here. But seriously, Leeds, not the best window. I was expecting better, and it just hasn't come. Now then, Liverpool. Wow. What a window it has been for Liverpool. I'm still yet to give out an A+. Liverpool have received an A. How could they not? But I just think there's a few confusing signings here. Great signings, but is it going to disrupt the overall feel of the team? Maybe. So we'll start with the big one. Alexander Isak signing on deadline day, record British transfer fee, huge signing. Where's he going to play? Salah obviously starts. Ekitike, how can you drop him? He's made a fantastic start to the season. Cody Gakpo, rejuvenalized under Arne Slot. Isak surely will sift onto the left if he's going to go anywhere, or will he start up front? I don't know. It's maybe a good problem to have if you're Arne Slot, because you've now got players that can play all across the front three. But where does Isak fit in? Of course, as I say, the obvious choice is maybe for Gakpo or Ekitike, but again, they're playing so well. It's just a very weird one. They also missed out on Mark Gahey, which I think genuinely would have gone down as a better signing overall for Liverpool than Alexander Isak. Crazy shout, I know. I just think Konate started the season horribly. Joe Gomez gets injured all the time. I'm just not sure the centre-back position has been recruited well enough for. They've obviously got this new young lad that's come in too. I'm not going to act like I know much about him. Maybe he can step up and that's what they see, and I'm missing that. But Mark Gahey, to me, was a priority signing for Liverpool, and they messed it up. They left it far too late in the window. Maybe Palace were being reluctant. I don't know. but they've messed it up and they haven't got their man. And I genuinely think Gahey has more potential to win you a league title than Isak. And that's not because, Isak's a bad player. They've just got so much in those forward areas already. I think they could have probably won the title with all those players. So a very strange one for that. It's still a fantastic window. Kirkes, Frimpong, of course, Trent Alexander-Arnold. How on earth do you replace him? Maybe with Dominic Szoboszlai. Is Dominic Szoboszlai now a very good makeshift right back? Who knows? Frimpong's come in. He looks very solid. Kirkes is keeping Andy Robertson out of this side. So clearly a very good left back as well. Liverpool, they've strengthened really well. They've spent the money. They've gone for it. In the middle of the pitch, another one. How can I forget Florian Wirtz? What a signing that could be. Again, he's struggled to adapt to the Premier League so far. He'll take this international break, rejuvenise, come back, and who knows where he'll be. But he needs to start firing too. But yeah, Liverpool, a lot of question marks at the moment. Are these new players all going to fit in? Are these new players going to win you the title? We'll have to see. In terms of outgoings, they've done quite well. Luis Diaz, Darwin Núñez, just to name a couple. So they've got rid of some deadwood players for them. They've brought in quality. Have they brought in too much quality? Does such a thing exist? We'll have to see this season. A for Liverpool, though. They've gone for it. I fully respect it. But is it going to actually hinder them by not getting that target position of centre-back sorted? Up next, we've got Manchester City, and I'm going to give them a B. It could have maybe been a B-, to be fair, because it's a very strange window for them. Why did they spend £30+ million on James Trafford to then go and sign Gianluigi Donnarumma for, again, another near £30 million? I like James Trafford a lot. But if you're him, I just don't understand why he made the move to Manchester City. It doesn't make sense to me. Newcastle came calling, potential to be number one for Newcastle in the Champions League, and you've chosen Manchester City, and now you're going to go and sit on the bench. Strange decision for me, for both Manchester City to sign him and, of course, also for James Trafford to go there in the first place. So the goalkeeper situation is a bit confusing. Ederson's gone, and now, of course, Donnarumma will be number one. Donnarumma, great goalkeeper, fully on board with the decision to get Donnarumma in. Great signing. It's just, I'm not 100% sure why they decided to go for both. Reindeers has also come in as well at centre midfield. Great signing. There's nothing I can say bad about this. I think he suits this system very, very well, and he'll be one of Manchester City's key players this season. And then we've got Cherki that has come in as the maybe De Bruyne replacement, who of course has gone to Napoli. And then we've also got Aït-Nouri that will slot in on that left-hand side. The problem for me, in terms of City's recruitment, left-back wasn't needed. People call me crazy. Left back wasn't needed. They had Ake, who's great cover to slot in at left back, but also Gvardiol, who's so good at going forward. The problem position for me, they were linked with Livramento, is right back, and they haven't got a right back. Rico Lewis, I'm unsure of, I'll be honest. Núñez, certainly not a right back in my eyes. So they should have got a right back, in my opinion. They went for left back, fine. Cherki as a De Bruyne replacement, different kind of players. How do you replace Kevin De Bruyne? You just don't. Realistically, you just don't. But Cherki is a good player in his own right. Him and Phil Foden, very similar type players in a game which doesn't really suit them. Will they be as effective? I don't know. So Manchester City, overall, I think it's a B. It could have been a B-. Just a bit of an average window for them. Are they going to push on this season? I'm now a bit unsure. Manchester United now, I'm going to give them a C+. Of course, they had a few players leave. Eriksen, Lindelof, Garnacho, of course, as we mentioned, for £40 million. So some decent deadwood going out there. Jadon Sancho, Anthony as well. They've done all right for them. Players that just, are very good players still that just haven't really fit what they were doing. In terms of who they brought in, Sesko. Oh, I'm unsure. He needs time to... I'm not going to cast a judgment on him just yet. He hasn't had a clear run of games. So Sesko, to me, a big question mark, a large price. He'll have to come in. Remember, he was on the Leipzig bench. Openda kept him out of the team for a vast majority of games. We'll have to see how he gets on. Mateus Cunha and Mbeumo, great signings in my opinion. No problems with those. They're not the issue here. The problem for me is they, of course, went and got Lamans. They were linked with Emi Martinez. They should have gone for Emi Martinez. I'm not just saying that as a Villa fan. They should have gone for Emi Martinez. All the problems that Manchester United have stem from the goalkeeper and those defenders. So the fact that they haven't gone and strengthened in the defender market, I think is insane. But I also look at it in terms of a goalkeeper point of view. You've gone for a young, inexperienced goalkeeper, and the pressure for playing for Manchester United is huge. Bueno and Cunha, they are established Premier League players at this point. Sesko, not. And you can see the difference in terms of confidence, and I think it's going to translate the same for Lamans in goal. They should have got Martinez. They didn't. They let Onana and Bayindir stay for so long. Onana still at the club, of course, as is Bayindir. So for me personally, I'm not a big fan of how they've handled themselves in the transfer market here. That's why I've gone for a C+. If it wasn't going to be Emi Martinez, they should have gone and got someone. They were after Donnarumma. How much they actually were, who actually knows? So yeah, a C+. I just think that, again, Mbeumo and Cunha, great signings. Everything else, not so much. They spent a lot of money and they don't look much better than they were last season. As for Newcastle then, a good window for them in my opinion. B+ overall. Of course, they lost Callum Wilson. They lost Isak. And I just thought at some point that striker position in particular was going to be a problem area for them. They've left it late. They've got Johan Wissa, great signing, £55 million. Same as Mbeumo for United. I'm not 100% sure on the fee, but they've obviously just paid to get it over the line. And they've also gone and got 6'6" Nick Woltmade. I think that's how you say it. Woltmade, maybe. We'll have to see. Give me a game week where I can see how the commentator says it. But they've gone and got him. I'm not going to act like I know much about this lad. I know he's been linked with a lot of other clubs. 6'6". Wissa, not the tallest. Is this Crouch and Defoe part 2? That's what people are saying. Maybe it will be. I do think it's a bit of a risk, but one that, if works well, will pay off. So I'm a big fan of their signings this window. Jacob Ramsey, of course, coming in from Aston Villa. He'll suit that Newcastle team so much. So versatile as well. On the wings, in midfield, he can do it all. Speaking of the wings, Anthony Elanga came in as well. £55 million, a big price tag for him. So him on the right, Gordon on the left. Wissa, Woltmade. I don't know how they're going to fit everyone in again, but it's a very, very good squad, and they've recovered well. The Isak drama, it took on the whole transfer window, so fair play to them. They've made some good additions. I'm excited to see how they sort of line up now, and the Champions League in particular. How far can Newcastle go? Newcastle with the new signings. If you're watching, what do you think? Not Newcastle. I'm sure the Newcastle board are not watching this. Newcastle fans, if you're watching, how far do you think you can go in this season's Champions League? Next then, we've got Nottingham Forest, who I've given a B+. So there's a couple of Brazilians that have come in from the Brazilian league that, again, I'm not going to act like I know much about these lads, but they seem promising. All right signings overall. Speaking of Brazilians, Douglas Luiz has arrived on loan from Juventus with an obligation to buy as well. Douglas Luiz will fit into that midfield. Is he going to take out Sangare? Are they going to play him and Anderson together? I think as a double pivot. Very good pairing right there. They've also signed Ndoye. Ndoye, a clear replacement for Anthony Elanga, who left to Newcastle, as we just said. So overall, they had to make those two signings for me in particular to strengthen midfield, but also to get a right-wing replacement. In terms of the quality they've added elsewhere, they, of course, kept Morgan's Gibbs-White under whatever circumstances they were. But Amari Hutchinson and James McAtee really give that Forest attack a lot of strength. And one of the Brazilian lads, Igor Jesus, he plays up front as well. So Chris Wood now has a good bit of competition there too. I think Forest look very good. I can't believe West Ham just beat them 3-0. But overall, a good window for Forest. They also signed Kalimwendo and Bakwa at the end of the window. Interesting to see how they'll fit into the system with all the other players too. As the same goes for Zinchenko. So Forest, to me, overall, have a very good side. That's why I've given them the B+. I wasn't sure at first if they were going to regress. In my season predictions, I put them low down. After the transfer window, I think they're right up there. Genuinely, I think Forest can challenge for Europe again. They've recruited very well. Will they run into some financial difficulties down the line? Maybe. With all the players that have came in, you'd think Gibbs-White leaving for 60+ million would have sort of, covered that, but he hasn't left. So we'll have to see how they get on in terms of FFP in the years to come. Now then, we have got Sunderland, and I am giving Sunderland the A+. What a transfer window from Sunderland. Before the start of the season, I said, teams that come up need to give it a go. I miss seeing signings of the likes of Julio Cesar for QPR, where it's just a huge name. Cambiasso for Leicester. Again, I know that these are just old players, but whatever. I wanted to see teams give it a go. Ipswich are a prime example last season of a team that came up, have brought a good championship side, got relegated, got one or two players poached, but overall they've kept this really good championship side, and they'll challenge and compete, and they'll go up again, and then they'll probably get relegated again. And go up again and get relegated again. And I'm sick of it. I'm absolutely sick of it. Sunderland, well done. You've come up, you've given it such a good go. So many great signings all across the pitch. So let's have a look at who are the best signings for them. So the biggest signing, the most expensive signing, it's Diarra, who's looking like a very good player, by the way. A real good bit of business. I said in a couple of years' time, he might be one of the best midfielders in this league, and he certainly started that way. They also went and got Granit Xhaka. In terms of centre midfield cover, this is the best signing they've made. What a signing it is. Sunderland fans, I'm sure if at the start of the window you said that one team was going to sign Jordan Henderson and one team was going to sign Granit Xhaka, you'd think it would be Brentford that gets Xhaka and Henderson comes to Sunderland. The fact it's gone the other way only benefits Sunderland. Granit Xhaka, what a signing he is. Got the assist for the Isidore goal in their last game, proving already why he should not only be one of the best players in this team, but when he's at his best, one of the best in the league. Genuinely great signing. Now, I don't want to go into every single signing because it would just be such a long video for Sunderland. Up front, Brian Brobby, good signing for them. A lot of hype about him. It sort of died down the last sort of 12 to 18 months. Is he going to really kick on now with Sunderland? I think he could do. They've also signed Talby from Bruges. We mentioned Bruges having a bit of a golden generation in terms of players. Jasari, Okenyenda, also Talby, De Coupier. That is honestly just, you know, when you say something, that has probably been butchered, all of those names. But Bruges have had a golden generation and they've signed Talby, who looks to be a very good player. On the other side, Andringa, again, a very good Premier League winger. And they've gone for it. A bit of Premier League experience, Champions League experience in Talby. So genuinely, all across the pitch, I can't speak high enough of Sunderland's recruitment. Lutcherau Gertruda as well, linked with Aston Villa, apparently offered to Villa because we were very heavily in for him a few seasons ago. He went to Leipzig, it's maybe not quite worked out for him there, but he's now at Sunderland. Right back / centre back. Honestly, Sunderland with Mukiele as well. They've got such a good team. Genuinely, I cannot believe they've made the signings that they have. A clear sign of intent. They're here to stay, and all the best to them as well. Because genuinely, with signings like this, the ambition to go and get a lot of these players, they deserve to stay up. Because so many teams, like Ipswich, not just singling them out, there's many teams that do this, come up, don't give it a go, and they head straight back down. Maybe Burnley is a good example this season, Leeds as well. Sunderland, they are by far the best transfer window in the Premier League, in my opinion. And I say Sunderland by far, just because obviously Liverpool and at Tottenham, who I'm about to talk about, they've had great windows themselves, but look at that Sunderland squad that came up, and look at it now, the difference is huge. But as I say, Tottenham, they have had a good transfer window. I'm going to give them an A. Some big signings that have come in particular, no bigger than Mohamed Kudus. What a signing this is. He will go on to be one of their best players this season, I'm certain. They've also managed to get themselves Xavi Simons. So Gibbs White, supposed to come in, didn't happen. They went and got Xavi Simons. Xavi Simons, to me, what a signing this is. I'm very excited to see how he does in this Spurs side. Thomas Frank, where will he fit him into the system? Kulusevski to come back as well. The attacking players for Spurs, very exciting. What I also like about Tottenham this season, though, they went and signed Palhinha and Bentancur. When you're in a tough game, needing to grind the result out, perfect. When you can be a bit more expressive in terms of your football, Sarr, Bergvall, Archie Gray, really over the board, Tottenham have so many good players to cover a lot of depth in a lot of positions, and I think getting Thomas Frank in as well. I was against the Ange sacking. I thought Ange being sacked was unfair, and he would have had a better go at it this season with a bit of backing. Getting Thomas Frank, though, proving to be a good decision so far. But I can't not mention the end of an era. Harry Kane, of course, went to Bayern Munich a few seasons ago. We're now seeing Heung-min Son over to LAFC. Honestly, the Son transfer, it kills me. It's just another sign that we're growing up. Son, a Premier League legend, no doubt about that. Genuinely, one of the nicest guys in football, apparently, as well. So Son off to LAFC, end of an era, Tottenham legend. I'm so happy that he managed to sign out with a trophy. Up next, we've got West Ham, and I'm going to give them a C-. It's just a bit of a strange window. I'm not sure if my C- is actually reflective of how they're performing on the pitch, but if you look at their on-the-pitch performances, they need so many players to come in. Callum Wilson, I like the signing, especially on a free. Problem for me, though, he's too injured. He's always injured. He'd always have an injury in the season. Is Fulcrook the man to lead them forward? I'm not 100% sure. That signing hasn't really worked out as intended, has it? The recruitment at West Ham, it hasn't been great in my opinion. I do think there's a bit of a panic buy-in here. It's Fernandes of Southampton, of course, a decent player. No one's doubting that. Heavy price tag for him. So we'll have to see how he gets on. A very Graham Potter signing, I'll give them that. It fits the mould of who I think Potter would like in the middle, but a big risk as well for that price tag. Again, West Ham taking the risk on a big price tag. Will it pay off? As well as that, we've also got Hermansen in goal. He's had a very difficult start. I do think he's a good goalkeeper, but is he one of those keepers that takes you forward, or is he a keeper that keeps you up? I think the latter. I think he's just a good goalkeeper that can keep you up, not one to take you forward. Igor on loan, Kyle Walker-Peters on a free. They're just good signings. They're all right signings. They're nothing special, nothing to write home about. Probably C-grade signings overall. But the best till last, Juve. On that left-hand side, I think he's going to have a very good time in the Premier League. Already started quite well. He'll have a lot to learn. Graham Potter will have to develop him himself. But I do think that there's a great player under there, and he has all the physicality traits, all of the technical ability traits to fit into the Premier League very well. So Juve, the best signing, C- overall for West Ham. Just an all right window. Nothing crazy. They haven't improved, I would say, but they haven't got that much worse. Lastly, we've got Wolves, and I'm going to go for a D- for them. Not really sure the fate of Wolves this season, where they'll finish. Some people have them mid-table, some people have them getting relegated, and the transfer window sort of summarises that for me. So to start with the outgoings, Aït-Nouri, as we say, Manchester City. Cunha, Manchester United. So two big players for Wolves leaving this window. They've got Wolf in on the left-hand side. He looks to be a good signing, replaced well. They sold Aït-Nouri for around £30+ million. They've brought Wolf in for 10. I think that's good business for Wolves, who are obviously stricken a little bit by FFP. And in terms of the Cunha replacement, it looks like they're going to go and double down on the striker position. Of course, they've got Strand Larsen, keeping him. Great bit of business. They needed to do that. They've also added Tolu to the striker partnership. Maybe they'll go together. Maybe they'll sort of replace each other here and there. Tolu, 6'8", I believe. An absolute juggernaut in terms of a striker. Will he fit into the Premier League? Maybe he will. Wolves, are they going to go now a bit more direct, lump it up to Strand Larsen and Tolu and have players around them? John Arias could be one of those players. He looks all right, in all fairness, nothing crazy. But the Wolves side that we saw a few years back, not quite the same now. So is their fate settled to get relegated? I'm unsure now. They might actually overlap Leeds, in my opinion, and get themselves safe. So yeah, we'll have to see. Transfer window-wise, a bit underwhelming, a D-. They had to replace players. They've replaced them, but with players that aren't quite as good, in my opinion. So yeah, Wolves, D-. And that is the end of the video. So we've had a lot of transfers take place. The most money ever spent in a transfer window in the Premier League. What a window it's been. The highlights, you had the Isak drama, the Wissa drama. You've had teams not being able to spend. You've had Tottenham quietly building a great squad. Arsenal got their striker. Manchester United, Mbeumo, Cunha, Sesko really getting their front three they never had. Manchester City signed 2 goalkeepers. Donnarumma, Trafford, who's going to play? It's got to be Donnarumma, surely. United went for a youthful goalkeeper. The one that they could have maybe got is now back at Aston Villa. Where does his future lie? Will he play? Sunderland, the best of the newly promoted teams. Gahey, moves collapsed at the last minute. Honestly, what a transfer window it was. In January, of course, I only just started the channel now. In January, I'm going to be covering the transfer window. I love transfers. They're my favourite thing about football, so I'm going to be covering in a lot more detail. We've got some EFL transfer content coming out in the next week or so as well. Don't worry, EFL fans, I've not forgot about you guys. I will be going into that too. So yeah, massive transfer window. If you're liking the content, we've got more videos like this coming up all throughout the season. So please like, comment, subscribe. And as always, I will see you on the next one.